Thanks for tuning in. This is ARIRANG News. It's 2 p.m. here in Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. The stories we are tracking for you at this hour. North Korea has vowed to punish South Korea without mercy if the country goes ahead and opens a UN office on Pyongyang's human rights situation. Korea's February industrial output rose at the fastest pace in nearly 4 years, but there are still questions about the significance of the upswing as it's largely attributed to January's low numbers. And U.S. Defense Chief Ashton Carter is scheduled to come to Seoul next week. The focus of attention, at least from Korean media, is on whether Washington's missile defense system will be on the agenda. Now, our top story this afternoon, North Korea is sending a strong warning against South Korea's decision to set up a UN field office to monitor Pyongyang's human rights situation. Now, this office, which was one of the recommendations made by a UN committee on North Korea's human rights, is set to open in Seoul in a few months. Hwang Sung-hee reports.
North Korea is upping tensions on the Korean peninsula, saying it will push ahead with merciless action against the South if it goes ahead with the opening of a UN office on Pyongyang's human rights in Seoul. In a statement on Monday, the North Korean committee in charge of inter-Korean affairs said it won't just sit back and watch the office open, threatening Seoul will be the first target of ruthless punishment. It added the South was making an unforgivable provocation against the regime's dignity. The establishment of the Seoul office to monitor North Korea's human rights was one of the actions recommended in a UN report released last year. The UN's Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights said last week that it's still finalizing administrative matters for the establishment of the office, but said it is expected to open during the second quarter of this year. This isn't the first time North Korea has protested Seoul's hosting of the office, but comes amid growing international pressure on Pyongyang for it to improve its human rights situation. Last Friday, the UN Human Rights Council adopted a new resolution on the North's human rights violations, urging Pyongyang to release its political prisoners. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
Washington's Defense Chief Ashton Carter is due in South Korea next week for talks with top Korean officials. Now, a government source in Seoul says the agenda will mainly focus on the threat posed by North Korea, but there's still speculation that Carter will want to talk about deploying a controversial U.S. missile defense system to the Korean peninsula. Our Kim Hyun-bin has more.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter is scheduled to visit Seoul for the first time next week for talks with his South Korean counterpart, Han Min-gu. A South Korean government source says Carter will arrive for a two-day visit starting April 9th. During his talks with Han and President Park Geun-hye, Carter is expected to discuss ways to better deal with North Korean issues and to boost the two countries' military alliance. But the main focus is on whether the deployment to South Korea of a U.S. missile defense system called THAAD will be on the agenda. It's an issue that has stirred controversy both at home and abroad, with China and Russia both expressing their strongly opposition to it. Carter is known to be a strong advocate of the THAAD system. During his confirmation hearing in February, he emphasized the need to beef up missile defense, calling North Korea's ballistic missile capabilities a direct threat to the United States and South Korea. Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, Martin Dempsey, who was in Seoul last week, said he had productive discussions with his South Korean counterpart, Choi Yoon-hee, about building an integrated air and missile defense system in South Korea. Officials in Seoul say that did not come up during their discussion. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Korea's presidential office of Cheongwade plans to bolster the country's ability to deal with cyber attacks by setting up a new cybersecurity control tower inside its national security office. Presidential office spokesman Min Kyung-wook says the move is aimed at strengthening the top office's role in cybersecurity and more effectively responding to situations like the recent cyber attacks on the nation's nuclear power plant operator. The South Korean government has accused North Korea of launching those attacks. Pyongyang has denied responsibility. Earlier this year, President Park Geun-hye appointed Im Jong-in, Dean of the Graduate School of Information Security at Korea University, as her special cybersecurity advisor. In other news, the U.S. has called Japan's wartime sexual enslavement the, quote, trafficking of women for sexual purposes. In a statement made in response to a request from Korea-based Yonhap News Agency, the U.S. State Department said their stance on the issue remains the same. This comes after Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, in a recent interview with a leading U.S. daily, called the women who were forced to serve as sex slaves, quote, victims of human trafficking. The Korean government took objection to Abe's vague description that did not imply Japan was the perpetrator. The State Department stressed that the two nations need to settle their historical issues, adding that a strong and constructive relationship between Seoul and Tokyo will promote regional peace and stability. Now, on the economic front, Korea's industrial output rose in February compared to last month. It showed the fastest growth rate in nearly 4 years. But the rise came largely from temporary factors, so there are still questions over the pace of recovery. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Data from Statistics Korea shows that production across all industries went up by 2.5% in February from a month earlier. That marks a rebound from a 2% drop in January and the fastest monthly jump in almost 4 years. The pickup, however, came from a low base effect in January and a rise in demand thanks to the Lunar New Year holiday, one of the country's biggest holidays that fell in February this year. The Finance Ministry also said that the output figure for all of January and February is not showing signs of a solid recovery momentum compared to the fourth quarter last year. By sector, output in mining and manufacturing went up 2.6% in February from the previous month, thanks to strong demand for automobiles and semiconductors. Service sector output rose 1.6%, while retail sales spiked nearly 3%. Facility investment rose over 3.5%. The Finance Ministry expects the trend of low oil prices and the low key rate to benefit the economy, strengthening Korea's recovery momentum. Attention is now focused on whether the March figure will back up this trend or remain sluggish, making it more difficult for economic policymakers to boost the ailing economy. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
And April is expected to be a crucial time for the Korean economy. Major reforms to the civil pension system and the minimum wage have been on the negotiating table for months, with time running out to gain momentum for a full-fledged economic recovery. Our Son Jung-in has more.
The government is aiming to pull the nation out of the sluggish economy through structural reform in 4 major areas: the public sector, labor, finance, and education, while boosting domestic consumption to revive the economy. However, in April, policymakers will have to come to agreement on the process of reforming the civil servant pension system and on ways to revamp the overall labor market structure. A full-fledged negotiation on minimum wage is also set for next month, amid pressure from the government to raise the salary to increase overall household income. Deputy Prime Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has repeatedly stressed that April is a critical time for accomplishing the reforms. He promised tangible results by the end of the month. It won't be easy. Structural reform itself is a complicated task. It gets even more challenging when the administration, lawmakers, and unions can't find common ground. Questions also remain about whether the National Assembly will be able to pass 9 pending bills on economic revitalization during a month-long provisional session set to begin April 7th. With economic uncertainty still lingering, insiders say the Korean economic landscape will be shaped by the outcome of these structural reform efforts over the next month. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
And President Park Geun-hye urged labor, management, and government leaders to meet today's deadline for a plan to structurally reform the country's labor market. At a cabinet meeting earlier in the day, she stressed that the reforms have been promised to Koreans and that they are a necessary measure to help young people find jobs and improve working conditions for laborers. Referring to failed talks on public employee pension reforms, President Park asked the related parties to reach a compromise to ensure the sustainability of state finances. And as for the negotiations over that labor market reform, representatives from labor, management and government have resumed talks this morning. Now this after they failed to come up with a draft agreement even after marathon negotiations that went on until late Monday night. They aim to finalize a draft by this afternoon. Still on the table is how to best reduce the disparity between regular and temporary workers in terms of wage and working conditions. Policies related to youth employment and reduction of working hours are also being negotiated. Korea's household loans rose at the fastest rate in 13 years last month on the back of the record low key interest rate and easing of mortgage loan regulations. The Financial Supervisory Service said Tuesday that household loans gained $3 billion in February to $470 billion, marking the biggest jump for the month since 2002. On the corporate side, small and medium-sized companies increased loans, adding $4.5 billion to stand at $480 billion, while business slowed at larger firms. Despite growing concerns about ballooning household debt, the Bank of Korea slashed its key interest rate earlier this month to a record low of 1.75% in an effort to prioritize economic recovery. Employees at Samsung Electronics are set to get a little more freedom with their working hours starting next month. Korea's tech giant announced Tuesday that it will launch a flexible work hour system starting April 13th. There had been a system already introduced in which Samsung workers could choose when they come to work, but under the new plan, they will be able to choose when they get off work, as well as long as they work at least 4 hours a day and meet their mandatory 40-hour a week. Samsung expects the system will help foster employee creativity. The new working hours will gradually spread out to other affiliates as well as overseas branches. In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. The investigation into the crash of the Germanwings flight in the French Alps last week continues. German prosecutors are now saying that the co-pilot who is suspected of deliberately crashing the plane was treated for suicidal tendencies in the past. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
The German prosecutor confirmed that co-pilot Andreas Lubitz received mental health treatment in the past.
Several years ago, the co-pilot underwent psychotherapy for suicidal tendencies over a long period before receiving his pilot's license. After that, further doctor's visits led to sick notes without suicidal tendencies or aggression mentioned in them.
They haven't found a suicide note, but investigators did discover doctor's notes in Lubitz's home, including one for the day of the crash, which excused him from work. Lufthansa, the parent company of Germanwings, said it wasn't aware of these notes because they're confidential, limited to the doctor and the patient. However, authorities added that they had not found any indication from interviews with witnesses that Lubitz was planning to crash the plane. While the investigation continues, these revelations are raising questions about how much personal health information pilots should disclose to their employers. Meanwhile, DNA strands from 80 of the victims have been found so far. But the head of the forensic team in France says it could take months to identify the victims and that they may not be able to identify everyone.
Fingerprint comparisons made from administrative documents take time because the conditions are bad. The samples and pieces of bodies are not in a condition that will allow an immediate and easy interpretation.
An official memorial service is set for April 17th in Germany's Cologne Cathedral. Germany's president and chancellor will attend the service. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
With just hours left to go to a self-imposed deadline, 7 foreign ministers are entrenched in late-night marathon talks in Switzerland to arrive at a framework agreement on Iran's nuclear program. Take a listen.
What I can tell you now is that after a day of very intense bilateral and multilateral meetings, the focus issues have been identified and solving solutions are in the process of negotiation. We are narrowing down our differences. That is to say, if everything goes well, there will be outcomes tonight or tomorrow. Of course, we hope they will be good ones.
Well, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi did not elaborate on what the remaining differences were, but said the critical phase required perseverance and faith to pull through negotiations that have, quote, all kinds of internal and external factors. Iran, the UN Security Council countries, and Germany have until Tuesday local time to arrive at a political agreement that would suspend some of Iran's sensitive nuclear activities in exchange for a scale back of limited economic sanctions that have crippled the Iranian economy. The final accord is aimed for by the end of June. Well, Korea has been joining the global trend of encouraging smokers to quit the habit. With the 3-month grace period ending this Wednesday, anyone who lights up in restaurants and shops, as well as the owners of the places, will be fined. Our Kim Ji-yeon has this story.
Smoking will be prohibited in all restaurants, coffee shops, internet rooms, and cafes in Korea starting next month. Those caught violating the rule will be subject to a penalty. The smoker will be charged up to $90, and the proprietor could be fined $1,500. Local authorities say they strengthened the restriction after giving businesses a 3-month grace period this year. Small-sized shops less than 100 square meters in width were initially exempt from the restriction, but are now subject to the rule. Shops are banned from running smoking areas, but smoking booths are still permitted, though customers inside them can't be served food or drinks. And this governmental health initiative seems to be working. The Ministry of Health and Welfare says the number of people enrolled in non-smoking clinics shot up this year. Nearly 262,000 applicants signed up between January and March 20th, 3 times more than the same period last year. But the ministry says it will be 6 months before it can determine if the number of smokers has truly declined. That's when a clinic participant can be classified as a non-smoker. Last year, around 44% of those who enrolled in clinics indicated that they stopped smoking for more than 6 months. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Robots helping household chores are no longer a new concept, but researchers in the U.S. have been busy expanding this idea. So people may soon have a slew of new co-workers who won't have any of the human flaws. Lee Ji-young tells us more.
It's not the nurse, but a robot that's handing a surgical scalpel to the doctor. It then passes scissors to the doctor when requested. Until recently, assembly line robots were not able to work alongside people, being that they were often too big, moved too swiftly, and were dangerous for humans to be around. But these so-called collaborative robots are smaller than their predecessors and move in a more controlled and meticulous manner. Experts say they could be utilized in various fields like the medical industry and housekeeping, further expanding the realm of robotics from auto and semiconductors.
Our research is motivated in part by the increasing number of Americans who are elderly or disabled and need assistance in their homes.
With the global market already warming up to the idea of private drones, companies producing these robots are jumping in on the action. And the growing competition and demand is raising expectations of enhanced productivity in the workplace, as the problem-solving skills of humans combine with the strength and endurance of robots. Lee Ji-young, ARIRANG News.
Now, many people have started to head outdoors to enjoy spring, but if you're one of those who doesn't want to go out because of the yellow dust, rain, or allergies, this next report might be just for you. Our Im Yuni is here as always to tell us all about it. Good afternoon, Yuni.
Good afternoon, Rain. So nothing really beats stepping out, getting some fresh air, checking out some of these beautiful cherry blossoms we're seeing. But today I have a few artists who are really giving Mother Nature a run for her money. They're all part of a couple exhibitions that really show the beauty beauty of nature in a gallery. Have a look.
Petals unfurl. A flower opens up into full bloom. Spring is in the air, but it's also in the halls of the Pak Yeosuk Gallery. Yes, they're made out of plastic or vinyl, but these flowers are just as beautiful as those found in the great outdoors. The exhibition Flower Power features a work of 9 different artists, each with their own take on the beautiful and the bizarre blossoms found in nature. Although it's just paint on a canvas, these flower paintings are nothing short of extraordinary.
Through the medium of flowers, although it's something everyone is familiar with, people can receive inspiration and even strength.
British artist Mustafa Hulusi encourages viewers to see flowers in a new way. His work juxtaposes geometric patterns alongside blooms and fruit.
The reason why I have figurative and abstract in the same painting is a way of describing reality in the 2 different forms of representation, both describing how the world is and how we perceive it.
Whether it's under blue skies or in the halls of this gallery, spring is in the air.
Those are interesting. Tell us more about Mr. Mustafa Hulusi.
Well, first of all, I don't know, but have you ever just stopped dead in your tracks because of how beautiful a flower is? You know, like a huge magnolia.
Of course.
So beautiful. Well, this artist, British artist, also wants to do the same thing. He wants to have that same effect with his works. And so he wanted to create these beautiful flowers, this beautiful artwork with his geometric designs that really just stops you in your tracks and makes you appreciate them. But most stunningly is the fact that these works of his, they look like photographs, but the flower part, they're actually paintings. And so they look very realistic, you know, beautiful works of art.
So let's go back to the first exhibition. I must say, frankly speaking, I was caught a little bit off guard with the eyeball piece. So this exhibition has not just one artist, but it involves like many different artists.
Right, so it's a collaborative effort from many different artists, Korean as well as abroad artists. But one artist to really pay attention to is Choi Jung-hwa. Now he's known for really recycling materials and making use of what you really wouldn't expect when it comes to art. So you saw in the report, you saw that sort of inflatable balloon flower that can open and close, but you also saw that flower globe. And so it's interesting, he said when he makes these like plastic flowers, he kind of likes the fact that they're sort of immortal. So these beautiful flowers, you know, will last forever. And I think that's another benefit to this exhibition. You know, these flowers are going to last this season until next season as well.
Right, okay. So I saw that installation piece, but I'm still thinking about the eyeball. I think that was really strong.
That's the bizarre part.
Yes. All right, thank you very much, Uni, for coming in today and sharing this report with us.
You're very welcome.
Hello, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Spring brings flower blooms but also dust particles. The fine dust level continues to be high, with Seoul topping out to 90 micrograms per cubic meter, while Gyeonggi-do puts to 132 and Gangwon-do at 154. Now, the southern regions are looking a bit clearer, at Jeju Island putting to 33. Now, fortunately, we have spring showers in the forecast today, which may wash away some of the dust. They are starting on the west coast and expanding across the country later this afternoon until tomorrow morning. The rain won't be heavy, but Jeju Island is expecting up to 30 millimeters, and the coastal regions will get between 5 to 10 millimeters, while the rest of the country will get about 5 millimeters. So keep your umbrellas handy. Now, with that in mind, let's have a look at the readings for today. Seoul will peak up to 17 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern regions such as Gwangju and Busan will both top to 18 degrees. Moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 21, Dokdo hits to 18, while Mangungang drops down to 10 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
And that's a wrap from us at this hour. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. Another edition of ARIRANG News with me coming up at 4 p.m. Korea time.